Welcome to the Oshow. I'm Laura Babcock, and it's time for another scandal panel. Not just by popular demand, but because of so much happening in the Ford government in the last couple of weeks. We've seen the Premier give himself new powers. That's right, new powers to force through a 95-year secret deal for a super spa at Ontario Place that nobody seems to want. A spacino. Yeah, I said it. I think there's a casino coming to this town, to Toronto. And I think that this deal stinks to high heaven. We're going to find out. The Auditor General's got a report coming out on Wednesday of next week. So I might call you back, gentlemen. But we have, of course, Mark Cripps. He was an insider, used to do comms for the Ministry of Housing back in the Kathleen Wynne years. And by the way, she'll be back on the Oshow soon. And we have Keith Leslie, former journalist at Queen's Park, who knows the scene better than all of us put together. So Keith, can you please tell us, my friend, since we saw you last, I feel like it's 2 weeks ago, seems like a lifetime, what have been the scandals that have hit your reporter's docket?
Well, I guess if we go in reverse order, so the most recent was the, and I'll use this term very loosely, business case for the moving of the Ontario Science Centre to Ontario Place. But anytime you see government saying we're going to save $250 million over 50 years, right. You know, let's just start raising everybody's, what? Okay, we'll certainly hold you to that promise. But 50 years is an interesting figure for them to put out here because this building, as we know, at the Ontario Science Centre I'm referring to here, was designed to last well over 100, 150 years by its architect. It's 50 years old and is being condemned. So why are we creating a 95-year lease for a spa or whatever is going on? That's a whole nother thing. And the need, again, is questionable because this really looks, business case looked more like a self-justification for the government's initial plans than anything else. We still want to see, I think, a lot more done to rein in this development. We need to know a lot more about the 95-year lease on the Therme Spa, such as who's financing them. I mean, and why did the government feel it necessary to exempt themselves from lawsuits, from the environmental policies and regulations? So no environmental assessment. I mean, they said they did one, not on where the Therme Spa is going. They sure didn't, not on the West Island.
Why do you need special powers in a democracy to push forward a secret deal if it's in the good of the public? Like that, I can't get past that. If this
Well, you don't. The bottom line is you don't.
Right.
You don't need to exempt yourself from every lawsuit and every piece of legislation you bring in. And just so you know, it's not just on the Ontario Place legislation, which they're rushing through with no debate. No debate on second reading. They're going to have 1 hour on third debate, or on third reading, excuse me. They're pushing all these things through for their own purposes. This does not benefit the public, who they know is very concerned about what's going on, about 800 odd mature trees being felled, and the fencing up already. Is this going to go ahead? The law appears specifically aimed, this is the law about Ontario Place, appears specifically aimed at foiling the injunction that was sought by the Ontario Place for All group.
Right, I was going to ask you about that. So they tried to put an injunction, which gave us all a breathing. Okay, maybe we can stop this, what looks like clear corruption, because it's secret, and now they need special powers to overcome the people. It's a terrible look for this government, and we're all deeply concerned about it. But I mean, this injunction, now they've got these special laws to work around that very legislation. I mean, Keith, have you ever seen anything like this in your time as a journalist?
Not that I can recall. Not to the, and again, the same exemptions are applying to the Greenbelt legislation, where they're undoing this stuff, to the municipal boundaries legislation. So nobody can sue us. We're keeping everybody at bay legally. We're exempting ourselves from every provincial regulation, including the provincial policies, which are a set of standards. Mark would probably much better address this than I have, about just honest practices and best practices in major projects. They're just bypassing, ignoring all of these. And back to your point, well, that does not inspire anyone's confidence, especially after all this Greenbelt stuff. But it's the exact opposite, as I've complained about so many times, of open and transparent. It's opaque and literally hiding everything that we need to know. And it must be to suit someone's purposes. It certainly isn't the public's.
Well, it certainly feels smacks of autocracy to me. I mean, if you're overruling the public, if you're not following the laws on the books, if you're creating new powers, an autocrat is a leader who does what they want. Is this what we have in Ontario? Was it worth the freaking buck of beer that we never got Ontario, or the license plate sticker that we didn't have to pay for to have this kind of crap happening? Our democracy is being pulled down around us, not just the trees that Ontario plays, for sake. Mark, sir.
You said the word you just used was exactly what I've been thinking about for the last couple of days. I am now convinced that we no longer have a democratic government. We have an autocratic government, and the way they are acting is unprecedented in terms of shielding themselves from legal liability. This is a government that is elected by the people, right? For better or for worse, they won the last election, but they are acting like they are kings of the land. And what I kept thinking about when I think about Ontario Place, I keep coming back to this one thought. You know, what do autocrats love to do? They love to build monuments to their power and hubris. And this is exactly what I feel like Ontario Place has become. It has become Doug Ford and the PC government's monument to their time in power. Be damned everybody else. Get out of my way. You're not going to stop us. We are going to do this. Screw you.
I think they're just determined, as Mark said, they're just determined to get this done. They're certainly determined to get these 3 major bills passed before the Christmas break.
So what stands out for me in all of this is the City of Toronto and the Ontario government deal that went down this week. You know, that to me was a sign that Doug was bound and determined to do this no matter what. And he, you know, basically, you know, for progressives, for a mayor who campaigned on saving Ontario Place, you know, I understand the metrics that went into her decision. She has a city that is, you know, needs money. And, you know, Doug came to the table and basically gave her everything she wanted.
Which is why I posted, you know, Doug Ford essentially gave Olivia Chow his wallet for a spa. What is it about this freaking spa?
You know, the premier has set in motion something that cannot be stopped. It doesn't matter who wins the next election. This whole project likely won't be completed before the next election. Whoever wins isn't going to stop. It's done.
Wait, hold on. Well, you know, people said that the Greenbelt grab couldn't be stopped, that there was no way that Doug could be stopped. And then the AG report came out and told us exactly how scuzzy that deal was. And the people of Ontario blocked his SUV at Ford Hot Dog Fest and stopped the damn thing.
Okay, yeah,
so
good point.
The AG report is coming out on Wednesday, Keith. What if we find in this AG report about the value for Ontario Place that it is a giant pot of money and cash payouts to the same names we've been seeing in the Greenbelt scandal? I mean, don't you think another AG report could, in fact, stop this thing?
Well, I think it's going to matter a whole heck of a lot whether those 850 odd mature trees are cut down between now and the AG's report coming out. And that's what this government is aiming to do by passing this bill as soon as humanly possible and taking away the public debate on it. They really want to get this done. And I think Mark was bang on. I think this is Doug Ford's legacy project. Watch for a Ferris wheel at some point. It's coming. With
I
the
would
Live
be
Nation
better off with a Ferris wheel than a freaking slot machine, right? Because a Ferris wheel doesn't hurt anybody. It's just annoying. I mean, annoying that we're wasting all of our money on a legacy thing for this premier. A casino, when the people of Toronto don't want one there, a casino that can be used for all kinds of nefarious purposes and brings all kinds of bad business to the area. I mean, I've worked in cities when casinos have popped up. It ain't a good look. It's not good for poverty. It's not good for homelessness. It's not good for the opioid crisis. Casinos take the most vulnerable and take from them for the wealthy. I hate them as a concept. And the fact that this might just be a 95-year secret, you know, backroom deal to get to a casino for Ford, you know, that to me is something that, tree or no tree, people of Ontario, if that's what we find out is going on here, we should stand up to. You know, how do they get it? Like, here's my question to you, gentlemen, and it's the same question that I've had with any would-be autocrat or rising autocrat in a democracy. We can't just be so blown away by the level and the extent and the fire hose of shit and scandal hitting us in the face every day that we throw up our hands and say, nobody can stop it. It can't be done, right? Like, it has to be stopped. We stopped the notwithstanding clause used against the education workers. We stopped the Greenbelt exploitation for wealthy developers. Like, if there is a casino going into this thing, or there are nefarious deals at play in the AG's report, I think we have to stop it. Like, I refuse to accept. I refuse to accept that things are inevitable. That's bullshit.
I don't get the sense, though, and I'm going to be really honest here. Like, I don't get the sense that people's passions are as big about Ontario Place as they were about the Greenbelt. I think that is, I just don't, I mean, yes, there are.
Like, the Greenbelt Stop Sprawl movement was in place well before we found out about the Greenbelt scandal. Right. So you're absolutely right.
And the other thing I think is funny, though, I can't resist saying this, but, we're talking about a spa and a casino, right? And I can't help but thinking, wasn't it a spa and casino that got some of the Ford people removed from their government from the Las Vegas trip? Like, they can't take away from the spa casino thing, right? Like, so instead of having to go to Las Vegas, they go to Ontario.
So, okay, that's hilarious on levels. I mean, like, first, I hadn't put together that the spa-cino at Ontario Place that we all think is happening. It wasn't just that those guys got caught having a spa treatment.
Testing it out. They were testing one out.
They were testing out a spa treatment at a casino. That's hilarious. That was actually an unofficial pilot project that got those MPPs booted out. That's funny. It's also, though, what do we associate with casinos, guys? Come on. I mean, like, why is this something that you get new powers for? You rush through. I think Ford bungled the big giveaway on the Greenbelt. He stepped too far. Icarus flew too close to the sun and melted. I think that.
Well, where's the money here? You're raising the very point. The money. Right. Follow the money. Well, why don't we know who's financing Therme?
Right.
Infrastructure Ontario is usually pretty darn good about detailing exactly where someone that's getting a 95-year government lease for prime Toronto waterfront land that could easily have built into a housing community or just a much broader and more inclusive public park. All sorts of options that did not include, and we keep going back and crapping on Therme, this Austrian spa, for a good reason. It does not belong on the Toronto waterfront. It never did. It never will, which is why people suspect it's a front for a casino. Because who thinks the spa is going to last 95 years? Well, they just showed us, as I said, the Science Center itself. They couldn't keep that going 50 years. They're wanting to condemn that. Why is a spa on waterfront land, which is basically all landfill anyway? Why are they getting this 95 years? It's absurd, other than, again, it's big money locking in something really, really major. I think, I think it was Mark stopped and said this brand of progressive conservative, in other words, the Ford Nation conservatives, because the Bill Davis progressive conservatives wanted Ontario Place as a very public park. They wanted families to go there and they did. And again, this is so typical of conservative governments. These guys have been in power 5 years. Look at the sad state of Ontario Place. It's run down. The maintenance wasn't done. Same with the Science Center. Well, geez. Conservatives need to run down a place by just simply not doing the maintenance that's required of them, that their government should do, let alone increasing and modernizing these facilities. And then who's our savior? What can possibly help us out? Our private sector friends with the money.
So they've run down healthcare. They've enfeebled it to the point where they're selling it off for body parts, right?
But I'm not buying that. How did they do that? The facilities are still existing in our hospitals. We have unused public operating rooms in public hospitals. Why do we need to be paying clinics 2, 3, 4 times? We don't, but especially when we have unused operating space. So they haven't even run them down to that point yet. They've run down our emergency departments to the point where they're closed so many weekends, you don't know where to go. And you're told to call 911 and try again.
66 times the emergency room. I think I saw this week in Durham. It's Durham or Dufferin.
Durham, yeah.
Durham.
It's a small little community.
It didn't have to be this way. Now it feels like conservative governments are private sector hedge fund sales companies that come in, take over with false promises and populist bullshit and sell off our public assets and don't even care that we see them doing it. It's that shamelessness that is the most alarming to me. So let me ask you, Keith, I cut you off after you brought up the whole business case garbage that Kinga Suma, that close infrastructure minister to Ford, who are always smiling so well together, like they're the cat who swallowed the canary or something. Kinga and Ford and their casino spa, their spacino, let's put that aside for a second. There have been other things with the Ford government that we have been seeing, right? Even around the Greenbelt and lands. And there was a story that I haven't even spent time on, but I'll get to in Hamilton, where new financing came out from the last election. And apparently our mayor had a dinner to raise funds from her most, loyal investors and people who she could count on. And shock and awe, some of those names are involved in the Greenbelt scandal, and explains to me why she never showed up at the rallies until the whole thing, the wind changed and suddenly you had to be against the Greenbelt exploitation. So, I mean, like, have you seen anything? I mean, I know, Mark, you're laughing. It's you speak to that, Mark, because it's fucking ridiculous.
Well, yeah, I think you just summed up everything that I've been feeling about the state of play and with the Greenbelt and all the all the insiders that, like, even people that you wouldn't think were insiders became insiders. Everybody wants a piece of the action here, and they all bought in early and they sold their souls to and Andrea, like, I can't even imagine her raising money from developers. Right? Like, I'm just how, like, I still struggle. Like, how was she the leader of the NDP? I always felt she was more of a conservative anyway than she was a lefty.
I've complained before about all through the Greenbelt scandal about it's not just at the provincial level where developer money is big money. At municipal politics, I'm sure they're the most active donors there are on the municipal political level in every community, pretty much, that's got anything we can build near or in or on. Because you brought up Kinga Suma. She's, the MPP for the Etobicoke area, for the Ontario Place area. She's also the minister. She has also been granted power now to issue ministerial zoning orders, not just the housing minister.
What?
So they're going further. They're not backing away from this whole scandal.
Hold on. Ford and Kinga Spacino fame. Now Kinga has the power to give ministerial zoning orders on development. Is that a first?
Oh, yeah. As far as I know, Mark, you were in the ministry.
No one outside of municipal affairs ever did NZs.
Got one more little, insider fun with all of this. Who's the minister that gets to decide whether the Ontario Science Centre gets torn down? Michael Ford, who only became a Ford, like he changed his last name to Ford and then became elected. Now he's a cabinet minister. And it's his ministry, I guess, under Heritage would be the one that would approve the tearing down of the Science Centre, which, although I understand from Mayor Chow, that's probably not going to happen, but chunks of it could. They've literally looked at this study that we can tear down so much for $10 million, so much more of it for $25 million. So, the Ford government fingerprints, as you say, they're enabling themselves to do whatever the hell they want, whenever the hell they want, and as soon as possible.
I mean, it sounds comical, and gentlemen, we laugh because if we didn't, we would cry, and there are people out there who are wanting to cry either for the Greenbelt or the trees being torn down or the cutting apart the Science Centre or diminishing Ontario Place or a casino maybe being in a secret deal or the rank corruption in this government. I cry because I see the homeless crisis. It sickens me that we can't feed people, that there are lines of people who are getting food Saturday mornings at Gore Park, downtown Hamilton. We are in this terrible situation as a province, and this Ford government is spending $500 million on a fucking parking garage for a secret spa deal for an Austrian company and giving himself special powers and his close friends special opportunities to rezone things. I mean, it's bizarre in the abstract and comical, but in the reality of the people who could use that money to survive the cold nights, it is fucking shameful. I can't take it anymore. I honestly can't. So if, to your point, Mark, People aren't as into Ontario Place as they are into the Greenbelt. They should be into where our money is going in this province to the wealthy at the expense of the people who are dying. As my neighbor who's a refugee said, the poor can't get any poorer, right? But the rich can keep getting wealthier if we let this happen.
Yeah, like you're on fire. Like you basically, I think you're saying what many of us feel, and it's not a partisan thing. Honestly, it just, I could have totally lived. I mean, I can live with another government in charge as long as they, practice democracy, do the best they can for people.
How much could the food bank have used of that, say, the parking garage money alone?
Right.
Because we've seen the figures from the food bank basically year over year. It's exponential growth now. It's not a doubling year. It's like the Richter scale. Yeah. It's just, each increase is tenfold what it was before. It's just shocking the number of people, and not just in the big cities, everywhere it seems in Ontario, that are relying on food banks. Then we have our tents, people living in tents everywhere. It's now December. If going past those tents doesn't break your heart, if you're one of those people that sees nothing but people with, addictions and other issues, and you're just going to, how? It brings tears to my eyes when I go by those things. And when I see those food bank numbers, these are not people looking for a freebie or a handout. These are people trying to feed their kids. And what are we doing, as you say, these massive mega projects for a mega spa? And I know that governments have to think big as well as small, but you have to think what you see every single day on your way to work. People living in tents. I saw something yesterday I hadn't seen before. Is it true that in Hamilton, every park is allowed to have at least 5 tents?
They've had to set up a new bylaw they're trying to break up the tent cities and create a way for that, like a minimum. They have to be a certain amount of distance from each other. I mean, it's playing around the edges, right? Pushing them around, separating them up.
It's not helping them, is it? It's
very, as of this moment today, Keith, 2 things. One is the mayor posted about a photo shoot she's having for some municipal magazine, while a bunch of organizations are coming together for a press conference to talk about how the winter strategy for the city is such an abject failure, right? So the juxtaposition couldn't be more disgusting. And I frankly did an op-ed this week where I said we don't need a cheerleader, Mayor. We need a quarterback. We need someone who's actually going to get the ball down the field on homelessness and housing. It's, 5 years ago, you could argue academically about so many of these issues. You could decide whether or not we're parsing it in a partisan way or whatever. If you can't see the person begging in the cold parking lot when you're out Christmas shopping, then you know what? You got to check your eyes, because it is number one priority. And I had a counselor on last week, John Paul Danko, and I said to him, his tweet saying it's not about homelessness and housing, it's about industrial versus residential tax base. And I said to him, you're wrong. For the 1,600 people living on our street who could die tonight, it is about homelessness. And he accepted that his tone was off. And next week, I'm going to have on a fantastic expert on homelessness and on refugees, and to set the record straight for Canada on how we're approaching this issue and the nefarious narratives that are developing. All of you who are subscribing on YouTube, please keep doing it. I would apologize for all my profanity, but I can't, because people are dying on our streets and our government's wasting money on a freaking spacino. I can't stand it. Okay, guys, have a fantastic week. Take care. Thanks for watching the Oshow.
Care about current affairs, it's on the Oshow. And when you want to get clear what's going on here, it's on the Oshow. If you like to stay in the know, tune yourself into the Oshow. It's the Oshow. Laura Babcock's the Oshow. With a lot of great guests, she puts them to the test on the Oshow. There's no doubt they'll be calling them out on the Oshow. Stand for something or fall for it all. Ontario, hear the call of the Oshow. It's a podcast, the Oshow. Laura Babcock's the Oshow. Stay informed with the Oshow.